Namastu, which means I bow to the divinity in you. Welcome to Q Radio, our very first show. And wow, I'm excited. Q Radio is a radio show that is on a quest to bring you the Atonus Karastian narrative. We are under the auspices of the Holy Qubtic Church of the Black Messiah, and I am your host, Ka-Hun, Anku Sarah. Today's show is sponsored by Qubtic Village, Florida, as well as Qubtic Kitchen, Bahamas. And please ask how you can become a sponsor today, or if you want to just simply send donations to assist our mother, the Holy Qubtic Church. Internationally, you can do so at www.journeyhomegroup.com. I'll put it up there for you. And of course, if you're in the Bahamas, you can simply call us. Our number is 242-426-1148. 242-426-1148. And I'm just getting all the formalities out of the way. We want you to definitely share this wonderful show. I have studio audience today. I want you to share this show as we're about to jump into our very first show, which is entitled Under Attack. Under Attack. What are we talking about? Who's under attack? And why is this topic so topical? Why is this so important today? We're going to jump right into it because I know that even though people will eventually jump onto the live broadcast, there are those who are going to watch the rerun, and we don't want to keep you waiting. Under attack. We're talking about Black genocide. You know, we as a people are in a day and time which really, if we're honest, isn't much different from the generation before or even the generations before that, as we simply have been under attack. We simply have been, as a people, constantly fighting to survive. This whole reality of Black genocide. We can go back to what is called chattel slavery. We had to survive then. We can look in the United States and we can see Jim Crow. We had to survive then. Here in the Bahamas and the Caribbean, colonization. I guess even in America too, colonization. We had to survive then. We were under attack. We had the lynchings. There's still, unfortunately, some of that going on. Attacks. We also have the attacks of sterilization. There are people who sincerely want to be vaccinated or, watch out for their health. And unfortunately, there are situations where women have been sterilized unknowingly, and that's an attack. We also have more of us dying, in the wombs of our Black mothers, more than some places, more than we're dying even from diseases, as abortions is another part of this attack, this ma'afa, as our elder Marimba Annie would refer to it as the ma'afa and others. And of course, there's the prison industrial complex. This idea that we're just gonna make sure that Black bodies stay suppressed. We're gonna make sure that you don't have a voice after you've been arrested, even though you should have paid your dues in jail. And there's gang violence across the United States, and even here in the Bahamas. We're gonna touch on it in a bit. We have some alarming numbers here in the Bahamas, and we're watching the alarming numbers even in places like Chicago, where there are more Black men dying in Chicago than over in Afghanistan or now Syria. And it's just really sad. Police killings, that's been some of the more recent revelations of this black genocide that a young man missed his bus the other day in the United States, asking for directions, and he almost died. All right, someone shot at him for asking for directions. You've been watching it. The two black men in Starbucks that, they called the police because they were blocking Starbucks. You understand? But the reality of the situation is we can't stop this genocide or this attack by simply ignoring it or simply doing what we've been normally doing. We have to diagnose it. We have to be aware of what we're up against. And so I want to just bring your attention. Some of you may know about this as well as maybe new, some of you. But I think we all know about the UN, United Nations, formed in 1945. And they adopted a genocide convention in late 1948. What they said was that genocide was the intent to destroy in whole or in part a racial group. To destroy in part or in whole a racial group. And based on the in part definition, there was the Civil Rights Congress, the CRC, a group of African Americans, they say with communist affiliations. We don't know, but that's how they word it. But in any event, concerned African Americans, and they presented to the UN in 1951 a petition called "We Charge Genocide." Okay, you can look this up. We Charge Genocide, and this was. I'll just put it up for those who may want to take notes or want to look these things up. We Charge Genocide. And there we go. And this petition listed 10,000 unjust deaths of African Americans in the 9 decades since the American Civil War, describing lynching, mistreatment, murder, oppression by whites against blacks, to conclude that the U.S. government was conducting a genocide of African Americans by refusing to address the crime of genocide. Petition, Commission of the Crime of Genocide. The petition was presented to the UN in Paris, CRC leader William Patterson, and in New York by the singer and actor Paul Robeson, who was a civil rights activist and they say a communist member. Of course, back then it was this whole thing. Just like today, you see Russia and America seeming to be at odds. We're right back to that again. But just kind of building the context for what we're talking about today, Black genocide. This is 1951, right? The Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, and that was December 9th of 1948. And the convention entered into force January 12th, 1951. And long story short, in Article 2, and I'm going through all of this because I want us to understand that when we say we're under attack, this is not something that the Holy Qubtic Church, Ka-Hun, Anku, or anybody who says this is just talking about. These are formal charges that the world knows what's going on. Okay? That's why I'm going through this. The world knows what's going on. All right? So Article 2 of this convention defines genocide as any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, whether it's killing the members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, we're going to get back to that, to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in part or in whole, or imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, or forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. All right? The convention also, in Article 3, defines the crimes that can be punished under the convention, one being genocide, or even the conspiracy to commit genocide, etc., etc. All right. Now, of course, anytime you talk about genocide, one of the first things that people talk about is the Holocaust, Nazi Germany, World War II. And why is that important? Because the so-called Jew, or the Jew of the Middle East, or Israel as they call it today, and around the world, have made it very clear that what happened to them in World War II in the 1940s will never happen again. They don't care if you believe there was a Holocaust or not. They make it their business to create their narrative. They make it their business to explain what happened to them, to document it. And they even make it their business to go after those who perpetrated those crimes against their ancestors. A gentleman, I can't call him a gentleman, but a Nazi with oxygen tank, wheeling him into court to prosecute him for the crimes of World War II in Germany concerning Nazi. So the genocide is not something that is just happening to us, but we, for whatever reason, as Nubian Mennonites, are not taking it serious, and we're not even brave enough to say that we're under attack. So anyway, the first draft of the convention included the political killings in the USSR, and they go on to talk about things that would have been made popular by the people who were most affected. All right? You had different leaders in the black community involved in the 1950s. William Patterson, Paul Robeson, as I said earlier, even W.E.B. Du Bois. All right? They all were part of this petition. And so I start there basically to say that there's a worldwide recognition of a reality of genocide. We can even talk about the 60 to 100 million, depending on who you ask, Africans who just died in the Middle Passage. Not who died getting to the coast, not who died after they landed in the Caribbean or in America, but those who simply died just in transport. Genocide. I mean, you think about how much was lost during that whole interruption of our reality. But it continues, sadly enough. I have an article here, and it is June 15th, 2017, written by a good friend of mine, Francesca Dorset. And I just wanted to point out a couple of things here in this article. And this was last year, not even a year ago. It's talking about the Bahamas being the 11th highest homicide rate in the world, triple the rate considered by the World Health Organization as an epidemic. And this is the health minister, Dr. Dwayne Sands, revealing this as he was the newly appointed health minister at this point in June last year. And Dr. Sands also revealed the Bahamas has the highest incidence of diabetes in the world, and 79.2% of the population is obese or overweight. So we're dying through this epidemic of crime. We're dying through this epidemic of food, which is another attack. And then he goes on to say, the number one cause of death of the Bahamian male is a bullet. Think about that for a second. The number one cause of death for a Bahamian male, these are, even though he didn't say it, majority of these are black men. I would venture to say 98%, 99% are black men. I don't find too many of the white Bahamians being gunned down like the black ones unfortunately are. And this was a recent crime study showing between 2012 and 2015, 78% of the murder victims in the Bahamas died as a result of gunshot wounds. So they were able to save some, but most of them died. All right? As it regards the statistics, and I'm going through this again because we're not just pulling the fact that we're under attack out of thin air. I'm giving you numbers, giving you things you can research so you can see for yourself that the fact that we are under attack is a reality. Dr. San said between 2012 and 2016, the A&E, the Accident and Emergency Department at the Princess Margaret Hospital, managed 8,000 assault cases, which included 1,229 stabbing cases and 1,078 gunshot wounds. In 2016, the health minister said the emergency room saw 1,272 assaults, 246 stabbings, and 216 gunshot wounds. That's in 1 year, people. That's in 1 year. And we have to ask why. We have to consider the numbers, consider the fact that we as a people are the ones creating these statistics. And the reality of the situation is, if we're not doing what we're doing now, which is to simply make ourselves aware of what's going on, then it's going to really take a long time for us to get out of this attack that we're under. But here's our narrative as the Holy Qubtic Church. Knowing all of this, okay, we have to consider some things. There's a form of black genocide that we don't want to discuss, or we don't even see as genocide. After all of the murders, after all of the stabbings, after all of us dying from diabetes and all of these non-communicable diseases, etc., there's a reality of a form of genocide that we are still yet to consider. And that form of genocide is religious indoctrination. Greco-Roman Christianity, Pale Arab Islam, the Jebusite Armenian Jewishism, all forms of religions that do not connect to us as Nubian Melanites, as Africans. Let me make it clear. We're not attacking these religions as the Holy Qubtic Church. We're not saying that for the Greco-Roman, his form of Christianity is bad, or for the Pale Arab, his form of Islam is bad. For the Armenian Jew, their form of Judaism or Jewishism is bad. That's not what we're saying. We applaud them for having the insight to make sure that they actually see themselves in divinity. But unfortunately, that's something that we as a people are still not ready to do openly, because when you talk to people one-to-one, they get it. They'll say, oh yeah, we know Jesus is black. We know that this Bible comes out of Africa. We know a lot of things that make sense, but for whatever reason, people continuously share the lies of one generation to the next generation, which is a form of mental genocide. And here's why I'm saying that. Going back to this Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, Article 2 of the Convention defines genocide as any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or a religious group. They speak about killing members, which that's obvious. But then in Article 2, Section B, it speaks about causing serious bodily or mental harm to members. Mental harm. So you can have a form of genocide based on mental harm, according to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, okay, within the United Nations. It was brought forward between 1948 and 1951. There's such a thing as, I would venture to say, menticide. this reality of a people's mentality, a people's spirituality, a people's identity being under attack. And that may not seem like a big deal to many people because people just want to live their lives. They just want to try to fit into a society that does not want to accept them for who they are, which is why you're trying to fit in. And as a matter of fact, you're being told that you don't even have a story. You're being told that your realities don't matter. You're being told a lot of different things that mentally destroys who we are as Nubian Melaninites. By Nubian Melaninites, we'll have a show on it, I'm sure, in the near future. But we're talking about the Caribbeans, those in the Caribbeans, the Latinos, the Latinas, melanin producing people, indigenous people. I don't just mean the blue black people. I'm not blue black, clearly, right? So there's a mental harm that we are enduring as a people, which is why we see, in the Bahamas, a plethora of quote unquote beauty supply stores. I want you to think about this for a second. When you run out of food, you will go to the food store. Yes? When you run out of gas or petrol, you go to the gas station or the petrol station. Yes? Never really heard of anybody running out of beauty. Because you must be running out of beauty if you're going to the beauty supply store. You must be running out of what? Your identity, the way you want the world to see you. If you can't produce that from within, then we have a problem. And we do have a problem. But here's the reality. Anything the African did to empower themselves spiritually, financially, or otherwise was demonized. Any spiritual power that we had was considered in the Bahamas Obia. All right? Which is another aspect of this black genocide. Now, recently in the news here in the Bahamas, we have been dealing with the stories of Obia. The Obia woman is on the porch, I guess, I don't know, casting an Obia spell on somebody. We've even had a video of a pastor who is said to been releasing demons from a demon-possessed woman. And apparently the devil is speaking through her and saying that she has the government in her back pocket. Big pockets, right? And even in one of our tabloids, The Punch here in the Bahamas, it's talking about excuse me, people who are paying bishops or pastors big money to lift a voodoo curse off of them, and the list goes on and on and on. And I wanna look at something here because we call ourselves a Christian nation. I want to pull up a verse. Bear with me for a second because Proverbs 26 and 2. I want you to grab your Bibles. I'll give you a second. Pull it up on your phone or pull it up in your Bible. And I'm going to read from the King James Version. Several versions here in the front of me. But it says, a bird flying to other places and a sparrow going here or there, so a curse uttered without cause shall come upon a man. Let me read it in another version. It's a little bit clearer. Proverbs 26 and 2. As the bird wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. In other words, if you didn't put anything negative out there, then there's no need for you to worry about anything negative coming in your direction. Now, what's interesting about this nation of ours is we call ourselves a Christian nation. We'll say that the Bible is the Word of God, and the Bible being the Word of God is a book that should be a protection, that should be one that brings comfort to us. And it shouldn't be something that anybody that's into witchcraft or voodoo or obia can actually use against us as the children of the Most High. Yet, a woman can stand on your porch with a Bible and you start hollering Jesus. Well, there's the problem with that. The only way that a Bible that you say is the Word of God could be used to hurt you as a child of God is if somewhere in that Bible there's an element of the very thing that you say you're afraid of, the demonocracy. And I say that to say because many of us have held or do hold the King James Version of the Bible in our hands, not knowing that King James, all right, wrote a book, same King James, that wrote the Bible. Okay, this King James in 1597, okay, before before the 1611 version of the King James, he wrote a book called Demonology. And this is the man who say he writing the Word of God. You holding it up as the Word of God. All right. This work includes his beliefs in Satan. You say the voodoo man following, the Obia lady following. This work includes his beliefs in Satan and witches. A historical work, an important read for scholars of religion. It says this title allows readers to study the beliefs and ideas and King James. So I want you to think about that for a second. Very man whose Bible you hold believes in witches and believes in Satan. I didn't say that. You could go and look this up. It's called demonology. All right? And it's important for us to understand this because this is a part of the attack that we're under. Because we're not taking these things into account. And not taking these things into account, again, is causing us to feed it to our children who innocently will accept it because they know that we love them. And because we love them, we're not going to give them something that's going to hurt them. And that's why we hold on to these things without question. And so this obia, and what are we afraid of? And when we talk about obia, what are we really afraid of? I mean, let's just be clear. I'm not here to defend obia. Holy Coptic Church doesn't defend obia. But I'm just being clear about the fact that everything that we seem to do as a people is that empowers us was either called obia or called a cult. I mean, here in the Bahamas, we even have a law against practicing obia. In our penal code, it says whoever practices obia or by an occult means or any assumption of supernatural power or knowledge intimidates or attempts to intimidate any person or obtains or endeavors to obtain anything from any person or pretends to discover any lost or stolen thing or the person who stole the same or to inflict any disease, loss, damage, or personal injury upon any person or to restore any person to health shall be liable to imprisonment for 3 months. Now that's interesting because it sounds like Christopher Columbus and the missionaries who came and stole land when they was giving us the Bible, like they was practicing obia, according to this. Because they said they had a supernatural power called God, right? He said, they say anybody who who has a supernatural power or knowledge, intimidates or attempts to intimidate any person, which is what happens, unfortunately, in many instances today, where people intimidate you if you choose not to believe in uh, Greco-Roman God, a white God. It says, or obtains or endeavors to obtain anything from any person. Well, how about obtaining a whole country? Or pretend to discover any lost thing. Well, Christopher Columbus said he discovered a whole country with people on it. Now that sounds like Obia to me. You understand? And so I just want to be clear when we talk about Obia, I need to know why every time we talk about Obia, it's being pointed at us as Africans. And here's what's really interesting though. We have an entertainer, or had an entertainer here in the Bahamas, called the Obia Man. And we celebrate the Obia Man. Matter of fact, we're not even afraid of him. We play his music. Yeah. We we own him. We claim him. You know, he's one of us. Obia Man. So it to me makes it even more interesting when in one instance is a law against Obia, but in another instance, there's an entertainer called the Obia Man. I guess he wasn't practicing Obia, right? And then there's this whole idea, because we have so many of our Haitian brothers and sisters here in the Bahamas, this whole idea of voodoo. And it makes me really wonder if we really are afraid of this thing called Obia, or are we really afraid to associate with Haiti? Because remember, this woman was a Haitian woman, they say, who was doing Obia. And why would we be afraid of Haiti? Well, Haiti has been made an example of by the world. Haiti has been made an example of with regards to being politically distraught in terms of the amount of crazy enough reparations that they would have had to pay to the people who enslaved them, the attacks of cholera and other diseases that have been placed in that country, the amount of earthquakes, etc., etc. Even though the majority of the people in Haiti are actually Catholic, which means they have an issue in and of themselves because they don't even know how they want people to see themselves, because Catholicism says voodoo is evil, but yet most of them claim to be Catholic. And then at the same time, there's still this element of respect for voodoo. But that's another show, right? But I say all that to say that when we do the research into Obia, you'll find that what they're saying Obia is, it says a system of sorcery and a religious practice developed among enslaved West Africans of Igbo origin. They say Obia is similar to the Afro-American religions such as Palo, Haitian voodoo, Santeria, and then they talk about hoodoo. Hoodoo is interesting. You know, later on this week, we have a show with our Basesh, Hotep Tar. If you have never met him, he is the global head of the Holy Qubtic Church. And he's going to touch on some of these things that we're talking about today, as well as whatever we discuss tomorrow and the rest of the week. But this Obia has made its way through the Caribbean, and they say it ultimately is coming from Nigeria. The people call it the Igbo. Some say the Ashanti. They talk about voodoo coming from Benin. But all of it is classified as that which should not be practiced. And again, I'm not arguing that it should be practiced. I'm simply, at this point, questioning the fact that the people who enslaved us and gave us their religion all of a sudden care for us when it comes to Obia. You didn't care for us when you were ripping us away from who we are, taking us away from our lands, taking us away from our indigenous environments, our indigenous true religious identity. You didn't care about us then, but you want to make sure we don't do something that you obviously see as powerful. And there's the reality behind Obia. We as Africans with an original identity, an original religion, We used aspects of what is called Obia today for the purpose of, well, for different reasons. One of the main reasons was in slavery that we had a powder or a concoction that a person could take or have blown on them or ingested in some way that could drop your heart rate to the point whereby it could not be detected by merely feeling the pulse. This then allowed for the person to be buried, and the very cross that was placed on the grave actually was a hollow pole, which allowed the person to continue breathing while in the grave. And then later on, after night had fallen, they would dig you up and take you to another town, and the slave master would think that you were dead. Of course, if that same slave master or somebody who knew that slave saw that person in another town, and they would say, oh, that person is a zombie or has come back from the dead. And so the tales have started. The tales started of the walking dead. And of course, if they were afraid of it, we would utilize it to our advantage. But here's what I find interesting. They say Obia includes both benign and malignant magic charms, luck, and mysticism. Magic charms. Well, in the book of Acts, chapter 19, verse 12, within the King James Version of the Bible, or dare I say the myth-made version of the Bible, all right? It says something here that Paul was doing that to me seemed a little obvious, right? And Acts 19 and 12 says, so that from his body were brought unto the sick handkerchiefs or aprons, and the diseases departed from them, and the evil spirits went out of them. But we just read in our law, where if you tried to hurt somebody or heal somebody, that was considered obia. So I just want to know, is there a double standard when it comes to obia or not? Is it good when the European uses it and bad when the African uses it? Whose interpretation? Obviously, this is the European's interpretation. All right? So the idea of laying hands and crosses as a lucky charm, etc., would have to be considered obia, right? And I say all this to say that the very people that are administering what by their own definition would be obia attack us when we say we don't want your religion. We have our true religious identity. We have something that works for us. Yes? And I say all that to say that when they grabbed us out of Nigeria, and those who were of the Igbo tribe or of Igbo origin, yeah, I wonder when they tried to live their true religious identity, what happened. But I don't have to wonder. We know what happened. They didn't allow it to take place. You were punished. You were attacked. But this Igbo tribe goes back to Eber, Genesis 10 and 24. You can mark it down. Genesis 10 and 24, right? Speaks of the tribe of Eber. And this is actually where the term Hebrew comes from, insofar as we understand the original Hebrews. These original Hebrews were the three groups of 12 royal tribes of Ishmael, Israel, and Midiani. Let's say that together slowly. Ishmael, Israel, and Midiani. All right? We're going to talk more about these tribes as Q Radio progresses through its lineup. But in our original books of the Bible, it speaks of these three groups of 12 royal tribes, or those who are of the lineage of these three groups of 12 royal tribes, as very, very special people amongst us. What do we mean by that? In the Barashith, because we as the Holy Qubtic Church We make it a point to read and use our scriptures as given to us by our Gabriel or Basesh, how the Hotep talk. And in the 39th verse of the 15th scroll, we read something that we obviously may have read in the book of Genesis, around Genesis 15 and 12. But this Zoser Ibrium, who was called Abraham in Genesis, would have had a dream. It says, and later that shadow hour, once the sun had appeared to set and the feast was over and all attendees had returned to their respective homes, did Zoser Ibrium, while in a deep sleep state, have a horrific and frightening vision where he saw countless numbers of his Melaninite people, including those of his personal genetic line, being invaded, colonized, abused, kidnapped, enslaved, castrated, raped, and dehumanized. So this is biblical now. This attack is not something that came up when the UN or when those who saw the attacks petitioned the UN to do something about it. We're talking about Zoser Ibrium. We're talking about the Barashith called Genesis today. But who were these people that were being killed? These tribes of Ishmael, Israel, and Midiani. You see, these were the lost sheep of the houses of Ishmael, Israel, and Midiani, who again were mentioned in the scroll 3, which you would say chapter 3 in Genesis. We refer to it as scroll 3. And in verse 77, for those Atonas Korastians out there who have the original books of the Bible, it makes mention of these pre-selected children who would be amongst us always to continuously give us a connection to the celestial heavens. Or in layman's terms, these children would be those who would keep us connected to our heritage, to our true religious identity. And it goes further, this reality goes further, in speaking of the genealogy of Isis. Say Genesis, Gene Isis, the genealogy of Isis. And this is what our ancestors originally taught us before we were being attacked, before we were in the position of slave, before we were in the position of not knowing who we are, or what our names meant, etc., etc. We lived in matriarchal societies. What were these matriarchal societies? These matriarchal societies are the societies that gave birth to these 3 groups of 12 royal tribes. And in accordance with the Tamarian or ancient African precepts, when we use this term Melaninite matriarchy, we are referring to a kind of society in which the Nubian Melaninite female played and yet still holds a pivotal role in all aspects of governance. So they weren't just women who cooked and cleaned and didn't have an opinion. All right. They were respected. They were deified. They were a form of divine mother whose leadership and authority through their works and their nurturing ideals we trusted. And so we saw these women as tribal leaders. We saw later on their children, and I'm saying that way because the women were here first, which that's another show we'll do. But the men that were to come later, which we'll talk about in a second, were seen as the tribal rulers, or the ones who would execute the laws that were put in place by these women. And we had solar societies, lunar societies, stellar societies, and telesocieties, or we had societies that were based around solar technology. We had those based on lunar technology. What's lunar technology? Knowing when to plant, when not to plant, knowing how the moon actually affected the tides. We also had those who watched the stars. You talk about the 3 wise men. That's a stellar society. And then you had those who dealt with the earth, the Teller societies, Tellar. All right? But these men who were the rulers were called the Asaurians, and the men and women together were the Asaurian Ossetian society. And we, who are of the three groups of 12 royal tribes, were never afraid, as we still are not afraid today, to speak about what is going on, what is our plight. We as the Asaurian, word Asaurian means watchers. So we've watched, we've seen the degradation, we've seen the decadence, we've seen our people run behind everybody and learn about everybody and try to be everybody except ourselves. And it's causing us to lose our nation. It's causing us to lose our families. It's causing us to lose our minds. And so this unified mindset that we had as the Asaurian or Ossetian society, we respected the doctrine of the divine feminine. We understood that our nations could only rise as high as our women. And this was our banner of unification called Atonism. Atonism or Atwanism said that there was a place for men and a place for women. There was a place for children. And understanding that the attack that we're going under, when we talk about gunshots and stabbing and diabetes, that's a more overt form of the attack. One of the main attacks that we are undergoing as a people is the attack of the family. You know, this whole idea of gender roles and what a woman is and what a man is and what's the role of a child, and you know, all of these things that are causing us to lose our way and not even want to see ourselves in divinity anymore is what we are being concerned about today. All right? And so when we look at who's dying today, and as the show progresses, we're going to be able to put pictures up and do more, right? But if you have an opportunity to Google all of the people who would have been killed, men and women, and they have it already a composite, especially those in America who would have died, you'll find that they have very similar characteristics. You'll find similar noses, similar eyes, etc. And for those of you with African eyes, for those of you who truly want to understand what we mean when we say we're under attack, what you're going to notice is that this is the gene of the gene Isis and the gene Asaurian that's being attacked. We're right back in that day and time where they say there was a ruler or a king called Herod who wanted to have all of the firstborn young men killed, back to the time of they say Moses, which is their mopsis. We'll get into that. And it talks about, or even some would even talk about Nimrod, right? Where it talks about babies being killed. And we accept that when we read that in the Bible. We accept that there was someone trying to kill a specific group of people when we read the so-called King James Version Bible, or whatever version you hold. But when it comes to this day and time, we don't want to see that as a reality anymore. We don't want to think that that's something that could still happen. But it is happening. For no reason, you're watching people die by those who are supposed to be protecting us. All right? Now, in the Bahamas, we obviously have more of a Nubian Melaninite population. But the policies and the indoctrination of these same people who, at a minute's notice or a second's notice, or push a button or pull a trigger, these are the people whose policies are running our country. That's telling us that we have to accept the degradation of the West. You understand? And those who would have been educated, I went to school in the United States, but others would have been to school in the United States, London, etc., etc. And instead of bringing back something to add to themselves, they left themselves over there and brought somebody else new. So now we have a bunch of white people in black skin running the country. And I'm not saying all of them, but unfortunately, there's many of them that are that way. And now we as a people, having been under attack, are not even being protected by those who are supposed to protect us. And so today's show, as we have a few minutes left, I hope would have given you an opportunity to do some research insofar as we as a people are in the midst of a genocide. And if that genocide is not a physical genocide, it's a mental genocide. If it's not a mental genocide, it's a spiritual genocide. If it's not a spiritual genocide, it's an emotional genocide. We're being picked away bit by bit, and we're not even aware of it. We actually go to the very people that are killing us to save us. We actually go and call on the spirit forces that allowed for us to be kidnapped, to be enslaved, to be lied to be miseducated in the first place. We allow it to happen. And I'm saying it has to stop. We are saying the Holy Qubtic Church, our narrative is that, number one, we need to know who we are. If you don't know who you are, then you won't even recognize when the attack is coming, because you'll think that it's a part of what you're supposed to be doing. There are people walking around thinking their hair is supposed to be platinum blonde. when they know good and well their hair will never be that color naturally. There are people running around literally stripping the melanin out of their skin, bleaching, right? There are those of us, and this is men and women. I'm not getting on any particular gender. Men and women are doing this, right? Listen to the type of music that we listen to. We don't even understand that the one day we're going to do a show on pure tones versus musical enslavement. We don't even understand that when we listen to certain types of music, it literally kills the nerves in our nervous system. Do we know this? Do we even care to know? Or are we just addicted to the rhythm? Are we just addicted to the beat? Because all of this is a form of our genocide. You know, when we're being told that certain foods are safe to eat, oh, milk does the body good. But it doesn't tell you which body. It doesn't say which milk may be good for you. A cow's milk is very good for a baby cow, a calf. But it's not good for us. Yeah, no matter what people may tell you, right? And so the reality of the situation is that we as a people, we have an opportunity, all right? This opportunity has happened several times within the past 25,000 years. And the opportunity is one whereby we, like they would call it the phoenix bird, but we would say the Binu. B-I-N-N-U, the Binu, or the Bennu. Yes? This bird that is able to literally arise from its own ashes. We as a people have been asleep now for over 6,000 years. And the earth that we walk upon is now going through a healing whereby she is raising children now, the Gene Isis and the Gene Nasarian, to assist her in healing this planet. So what we're doing is not something to just be different. What we're doing is not something to just, you want to dress up and sound deep and be woke, as they would say. That's not what this is about. We're a part of a movement that this planet started. Okay? 1970, thereabouts. The sun cycle. We'll talk about all these things as you stay tuned. If you assist us with keeping this show on Facebook and eventually as we aim on the radio, if you assist us by donating to www.journeyhomegroup.com internationally or here in the Bahamas by calling 242-426-1148. If you are able to assist us, we can get further and further into understanding the Atonus Karastian narrative on not just genocide, but our identity and a whole lot more. Because the reality of the situation is, we go on talk shows and we have a good time and we do the best in terms of answering people's questions, but we're out of time now. We have to understand that we can't wait for people to ask us questions anymore. We have to come out and tell you certain things. You understand? But here's the reality. There's a group of people that are threatened by you. They fear you. They fear that you will outnumber them, and they fear that you will become conscious and take back rulership of this planet. And they will do whatever it takes to stop that. All right? If it's not clear by now, it should be. You should understand why women are being recommended to have hysterectomies for no good reason. You should understand why people are being vaccinated and finding out that they're sterilized. You should understand why black men in particular are being imprisoned the way that they are. You should understand why abortions are commonplace in our society, for no good reason. We're going to talk about abortion one day because we're not talking about those who may have been raped or molested. Okay? That's a different story, right? And we need to understand that the very circumstances that are placed on us, whereby we would even want to do some of the things that we do to ourselves, is a form of genocide. You understand? Gang violence. This whole idea that young men are out here shooting up each other when we don't even make guns. We don't grow cocoa to make cocaine. You understand? We aren't the ones actually manufacturing this madness. How is it getting into our communities if it's not genocide? You understand? And so this attack is not an attack that we have to continue to be subjected to. This attack is an attack that we can be aware of, and in being aware of it, we can actually do something about it by doing what? Coming out of her. As the Istanjil, the African book of Revelation, speaks to in the 18th scroll. And it's very important that we understand, and in order for us to come out of her being Babylon, we have to have somewhere to go. So we have to be willing to farm. We have to be willing to put our money where our mouth is and create communities and environments for us to be safe. We have to do these things, and we can't falter in doing them, because in faltering, we only allow another generation to be subjected to the madness. So that's it for today's show on Q Radio. On a quest to bring you the Atonus Karastian narrative, as we are under the auspices of the Holy Qubtic Church of the Black Messiah. And today we're being sponsored by the Qubtic Village, Florida, and also Qubtic Kitchen, Bahamas. And we want you to be a sponsor. If you want to become a sponsor, please feel free to call us at 242-426-1148, which is the number you see flashing right there. And we'll be happy to get you on board. And we'll have more sponsorship information for you once you contact us, as we definitely need your participation to keep this show running. All right. Also, if you just want to donate, as we do have a lot that we have on the table, you can do so internationally by going to our website, www.journeyhomegroup.com, whereby you can find a donate button, and you can donate as much as you can to assist us. Or again, in the Bahamas, if you want to donate, simply call us 426-1148, and we'll guide you further as to how you can assist us financially or otherwise. But until tomorrow we're going to be talking about the original books of the Bible. What are these original books of the Bible, and how do they differ from the Bible that we have come to know all of our lives? I mean, I think it's going to be something that you definitely don't want to miss, because the reality of the situation is, if you haven't read the Bible in its original languages, then you really haven't read the Bible. With that, we're going to say Namastu, which means I bow to the divinity in you. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care. I'll have the music tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah.